Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa Ely and this is going to be an autistic woman recommends autistic books number 2. I think actually the last one was called Autistic Girl Recommends Autistic Books, but I've decided I'm a woman now and not a girl. So I will link part 1 below. And I'm a little more nervous than usual when filming videos because the last one of these ended up being my most viewed video ever, but I haven't gotten any negative comments on it or anything, so a lot of people were looking for that content. So I'm going to organize this by genre and age range, kind of just put them into a few groups. The biggest groups are nonfiction, contemporary, middle grade, and romance. The odd one out is a historical fiction by Claudia Gray. It's The Murder of Mr Wickham, and this is, I believe, not own voices. I will be talking about whether I know that they are own voices or not, and I will also be putting that information in the description, especially so that I can update it later on, because in my last video, for example, I mentioned one that I just had a headcanon that the character was autistic, and then later after the video came out, the author came out as autistic and confirmed that the character is autistic. So the information might change. Check the description for the most up-to-date information that I have. But The Murder of Mr Wickham. This is not a retelling of Jane Austen, but more of a fan fiction type thing. Where it takes place after all of the books, and all of the couples have come together for a dinner party, and they're all different ages and it's different spans of time since the books happened. So some of the couples have only just gotten married, but some have teenage children. As the title suggests, Mr. Wickham shows up uninvited, of course, to this dinner party and gets murdered, and then the mystery is who in the house would have murdered Mr. Wickham, and gradually find out that almost everyone in the house had a motive, so it's like very much not clear cut, but we're also fairly certain, because of there being a storm and such, that it was somebody within the house. So it's a very cool somewhat high tension mystery, because you don't want any of your beloved characters to get in trouble for having murdered Mr. Wickham. And the main investigators who are following are a couple of teenagers, one of whom is the son of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, and he is autistic, and he starts working with this young woman who is the daughter of, I think, the woman from Northanger Abbey, and they work together to try to clear his parents' names, and then to eventually find the murderer so that everybody can relax and go home. So this is fairly casual representation. There's not a lot of angst, but there are a lot of showing of autistic traits and both the downsides and the upsides of how that was Frodo, how an autistic brain can be both helpful and detrimental for various activities. I especially like to see autistic representation in historical fiction because, for one, historical fiction has kind of a bad history of how it treats people who are neurodivergent or mentally ill, and so seeing it handled well is a bit healing, and I hope that it helps bring awareness to people who primarily read historical fiction. Plus, I just really love a Jane Austen oriented story. By the way, I've given almost all of these 5 stars, and I'll mention the ones that I didn't. Let's do nonfiction next. First of all, The Reason I Jump by Nokihikoshita. This is a Q&A style book that is by a non-speaking autistic person who uses AAC, and those people we especially need to uplift their voices because they are often ignored and treated as if they cannot communicate when they can. People will usually want to speak over them instead of allowing them to talk about, communicate about their own experiences and their own perspectives, because they do have a different experience from those of us who are autistic but speaking. This one is fairly simple and very accessible, I found. I think it's a very good... Oh, and it was originally in Japanese, I believe, and was translated. I will find the name of the translator and put it in the description. I think it's a very good starting point for someone who wants to learn about autistic people, because it's in very accessible language and it answers a lot of the beginner sort of questions that a lot of neurotypical people have when they haven't had much education about autistic people. It does fall into a little bit of the problem of the author uses his own experiences kind of exclusively and talks as if all autistic people experience things in a very similar way to him, whereas some people have very different experiences. But the author was very young when he wrote it, so that's not very unexpected. But a lot of the answers can be applied very broadly to a lot of autistic people, and I think it is a really helpful book, and also offers a perspective, as I said, that needs to be emphasized. Then we have Spectrums, which is a collection of essays by trans autistic people, and this is also another marginalization that needs to be lifted up. A lot of autistic people are trans, partially because our brains don't work the same way as neurotypicals, and we are a lot less accepting of this is the way it is because it's the way it is. So naturally, with the gender binary being an artificial construct, a lot of us don't just go along with that. A lot of us find that that is not accurate to our experience. And so this is a bit of a difficult read for me because it does have a lot of struggling stories where the essay is about the person being treated poorly either because of their autism or their transness or both, but there are also a lot of uplifting stories that are about either start out bad and things get better, or it's just about autistic and trans joy. I've been like reading and listening to a lot of trans stories over the last couple of years, so I have become more familiar with a lot of the experiences, but there was still more stuff to learn that I learned from this book. Of course, if you've met one trans or autistic person, you've met one trans or autistic person. But yeah, I obviously especially enjoyed the ones that were about joy, but the more difficult stories are still important. A lot of them talk about how their autism interacts with their transness. Okay, now romance. First of all, The Brown Sisters by Talia Hibbert. This is a series, and before the third book came out, all we knew was that both Brown sisters beforehand, Danny and Chloe, had disabilities. One had ADHD, possibly something else. And Chloe had fibromyalgia, and so I really loved it for that representation. But in the third book, Eve figures out that she is autistic, and also this is an autistic plus another autistic romance, and kind of examines her family and realizes that a lot of her family members are also autistic, and so other people can do with this what they will, but I consider both Chloe and Danny to now be autistic representation, and this is Own Voices. Talia Hibbert is autistic. I believe she might also have fibromyalgia. In fact, I'm pretty sure she does. I love all of these romances. I especially love the first one and the third one, but all of them have really great banter between the characters. That it's not actually nasty banter, but they are teasing each other, and I really like that. And they're also very sweet stories and tend to have both the main characters having hurts in their past that they have to overcome to open their hearts to love, which is something I consider very sweet. And of course, in the third one, we have examination of autism and self-diagnosis representation and coping mechanisms and figuring out how to communicate when you both have difficulties in that area and you're like have different backgrounds, so the ways you have learned to communicate with other people are different. Yeah, they're all very sweet stories, but I have a hard time picking a favorite between Eve Brown and Chloe Brown. Chloe Brown has a cat, so there is that working in its favor as well. Then The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. I believe I talked about the first 2 books in this trilogy in my previous video, but this third one kind of goes to a different tact. It's less of a romance. There is a romance, but it's a bit more of a subplot, and this is more of a women's fiction main plot, which a lot of people were disappointed in because it is advertised as a romance, and I believe was originally intended to be more of a plain romance, but the author suffered from burnout while writing it, and so she incorporates a lot of her experience with that into the book instead of focusing as much on the romance, which I found really valuable as an autistic person, because I've been in burnout for like 5.5 years, and it's also good to see their representation, but I also don't want people to like go into it thinking it's majority romance and then have this much more dealing with your own issues, personal growth, women's fiction, more type stuff, and be disappointed. But if you want to know what happens to the previous main character, Kai's brother, who's a sweetheart and has been a sweetheart throughout the 2 previous books, if you want to see what happened to him, this is the book about him, and it's also a story of self-diagnosis as well. Then we have some very forgettable titles. Always Only You and With You Forever by Chloe Leese. This is a series of romances about the Bergman brothers. In every book, at least one of the main characters has some sort of disability. Sometimes it's both characters. I don't know which title goes with which book, but one of them is about an autistic woman who is the social media manager for a hockey team falling in love with a member of the team who is one of the Bergman brothers, and the other is about one of the Bergman brothers who is autistic falling in love with a family friend who has IBD, irritable bowel disease. And they're both very sweet. These are regular old romances with a side of disability. I think the Bergman brother is self-diagnosed and the hockey social media manager is formally diagnosed. And they are very sweet. They have a lot of self-esteem issues like a lot of autistic people do, but they're also paired with other people who have issues and are very sensitive, and they have to grow together. And in the hockey one, the autistic character gets together with the autistic sister of her love interest, and they bond and like she helps the younger, more recently diagnosed sister come to terms with things and figure out coping mechanisms and stuff, and that was the sweetest chapter ever. I loved it so much. Then we have Sunday's Child by Grace Draven. This is a novella, maybe even a short story. It's pretty short, and it is about a young girl who can see magical creatures, sees a Santa's helper, and then grows up and becomes a museum curator, and then during his time off from working with Santa, he goes to work at the museum as well, and they meet again, and like he's, you know, immortal, so he's the same age as he was when she was a kid, and they only met the one time. It wasn't a weird thing. And she has an autistic child now. He's just a side character, but I like the representation, and she was not one of those autism moms TM. She didn't consider him a burden. She was very positive about him, and it was a very sweet story. And also, as I like single parent romances, the romantic interest bonds with the child, and that's an important part of the story. But just a little short story that I enjoyed. I really like Grace Draven, so it was fun to find that in one of her books. Then A Girl Like Her by Talia Hibbert. This is a part of Talia Hibbert's backlog, one of the older books, and it is about a woman who has a bad reputation in town because she likes to have sex, and it's a small town in England, and people are really jerks about it, and like most of Talia Hibbert's protagonists, she is fat, so we have that rep as well, and of course that also makes people in her small town not like her, and she has been burned very badly in the past by a romantic relationship. So when her new neighbor moves in and I think makes her a lasagna because he's worried that she's not feeding herself as much as she should. For one, I believe because she stays up at all hours working on her comic, I think, or her web. I'm not sure if it's illustrated or if it's just just words online, but she publishes it online. And he's worried she's not taking care of herself, but she is very reticent to get into a relationship again because of this bad experience. And yeah, it's very sweet. Then we have contemporary middle grade. A Bird Will Soar by Alison Green Myers. This one is not own voices. It is by the parent of an autistic kid, and a lot of times that is a warning sign because a lot of autistic parents can be very negative about their kids, or will either go the negative, act like they are a martyr for having an autistic child route, or will go the inspiration corn route. But this, I felt, didn't fall into either camp. I thought it was very understanding, and I feel like the author might be autistic herself, because it is written with such a good understanding of the inside of an autistic child's brain, because it is from the autistic child's perspective, and I feel like it would be very difficult to write the autistic experience that well if you're a neurotypical person. But she could also just be very in touch with her kid. This is about grief and family dynamics and a lot of found family that's very sweet. He and his single mom are living with some people who they are not related to. I think an old gay couple and one of their sisters. It is such a sweet story. Parts of it are a little bit difficult to read, but not only does the autistic kid have supportive family and found family, he also has a really supportive person at school, who is actually based on a real person who is really supportive to the author's kid at school. So it's nice that there are real people in schools who are that supportive. And also, I think is writing letters to or emails to a scientist who specializes in his special interest, I think birds in general. And so he finds, I think, a eagle baby in the woods whose nest has been destroyed, and consults with this scientist who like runs a wildlife rescue, and they take care of the baby eagle together, and it's very sweet. And yeah, there are a lot of melancholy moments, but it's overall uplifting, and I really enjoyed it. Then there's Get a Grip, Vivy Cohen by Sarah Caput. This one is the one that I would give 4 stars instead of 5, simply because it was so sad in a lot of moments. It was really difficult to read sometimes. It was very accurate to a lot of autistic experiences, but some of those were very negative experiences. This is an epistolary novel, which I do love that style, of emails between Vivy Cohen and her favorite baseball pitcher. She is also a young pitcher in Little League, and they throw the same type of pitch called a knuckleball, which hardly anybody uses. And so he's her hero, and they write back and forth, and it's very sweet, but it's also a little bit fraught because he has had a bad season, and so when she tries to talk to him about it, he gets upset. Not in a really bad way, but just in a very real way. She also has people who bully her on the team, and her therapist thinks that she should not be allowed to engage in her special interest just because it's a special interest, and special interests are not normal neurotypical behavior. So that made me very angry. But yeah, so the more excited she is about baseball, the more her mom, who is neurotypical, thinks that they should keep her away from it. So that's very upsetting. The dad, I'm fairly certain, is autistic as well. I don't know if it's outright stated, but they do kind of come to the conclusion that his brain is more like the daughter's than neurotypical people's. So that's very sweet, and ultimately I really love the relationship between her and the knuckleball pitcher. And her team is very cool as well eventually. And yeah, it's a very sweet story, but also very sad, so be prepared going in. Then Helen Outside the Lines by A.J. Sass. This is also a queer book. Our main character is a girl who likes girls. This is about her trip to Barcelona with her Spanish class. And she gets stuck with a bunch of people she doesn't know at all on her team that explores Barcelona together. At least she has her dad with her team as the chaperone for her little group. But yeah, so she's very nervous about these other people and about being in all these new situations and not having a set schedule. But her team really helps her work through it, and they do end up bonding, and it's very, very sweet. I'm pretty sure that that one is also Own Voices. And Get a Grip is Own Voices as well. I forgot I had to go grocery shopping with my dad today, so I went and did that, and now I'm back. So I now have two headcanons that I think, or autistic coded characters I want to talk about. One is the main character of Something to Say by Lisa Moore Ramey. This is another contemporary children's, and it is about a young black girl who speaks up at a town meeting about renaming her school after a woman of color instead of a racist white man. And it involves her making with a friend who's ADHD coded, and it's a very sweet little story. And she has some social anxiety. Then a middle grade fantasy, Willodeen by Catherine Applegate. I adore this. This is about a young autistic coded girl discovering that her village has had unintentional bad effects on the local environment and the local animal life. When they try to get rid of one animal that stinks and scares away tourists, it starts messing with other things, and she notices that and starts working to do something about it. And it's a very sweet story. It is about the environment and taking care of the environment, and about how you can't take one thing out of it and expect it not to have an effect. And it's also about an autistic person caring about something that nobody else cares about and ending up saving the village via that. So it's very precious, and I like it a lot. Then we have, I forgot to cover this in the nonfiction section, but On the Spectrum by Daniel Bowman Jr. Autism, Faith, and the Gifts of Neurodiversity. So this is by a Christian autistic person and this is a series of essays about how he believes that art, faith, and autism interact. Because he loves art, like photography, paintings, but especially stories, which is my special interest and is kind of his as well. And he talks about several books on neurodiversity and autism specifically in here that I have not read yet, so I'm gonna now go read these, and I have several other books on my reading list, so there will be a part 3 of this video, but I really enjoyed this. If you are someone who has religious trauma, I probably wouldn't recommend reading this unless you are someone who wants to rework religion into something that's more friendly to you. If you just want to not have religion be part of your life, this is probably not what you want. But this is partially about how the Christians who are anti-neurodiversity are wrong. And that was very special to me as an autistic Christian myself. And also how faith intersects with art is also very important to me. And there's a whole essay on bad Christian storytelling, so like a fair number of Christian fiction books, and also anything that ends up on PureFlix, which PureFlix sounds like a parody of a thing that Christians would make, but unfortunately the parody is real. So thank you so much for watching. I will link below autistic YouTubers that I know of. I'll try not to leave anybody out, but I don't know everybody's neurodiversity who I follow. And if you are autistic, I would love to have you comment below and we can get to know each other, whether you're a creator on YouTube or you just watch and comment. Oh, I'll also link below my autism and books tag and the other autistic tags that I've done, and so those also have like links to other creators and stuff like that. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! Oh, and if you want to leave an emoji, how about a unicorn, because I like unicorns.